Morning, everyone. I hope that you can see me and hear me. Glad to have you with us this morning for a webinar on starting and growing value-added food businesses in North Carolina. This is hosted by the project that I work for, which is called NC Growing Together. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. We're based at the Center for Environmental Farming Systems, which is a project of NC State University, NC State University, and the North Carolina Department of Agriculture. We are really grateful to our hosts at the North Carolina Rural Center for putting all of this together and setting up all of the technology for us. They've been a really good partner as well for small business development and food and farm business work around the state with us. And I'm also going to be really excited to introduce our presenter to you today. I think that you are really going to enjoy what we've got lined up. Yes, okay. So most of you probably already know a little bit about NCGT. I just wanted to sort of give you a quick overview. We are a 5-year USDA-funded project. We work to move local products into mainstream markets. So we work with producers across North Carolina in a variety of capacities, produce, meat, dairy, seafood, value-added, trying to connect them with the resources that they need to be able to sell into mainstream markets, wholesale markets, and institutional markets around the state. This year we have focused a lot on working with small business center networks and SBTDCs around the state, as well as local and regional governments, to sort of help those folks understand better ways to help value-added and food-producing clients around the state once this grant is ended. So this is part of that. This also kicks off a webinar series that we'll be doing later in the year, about once a month through the end of 2017. So if you're interested in that, we'll have some information on that later in the day as well. Just to give you a couple of quick pieces of information, if at any point you have questions that we don't get to, or you need access to resources that we have not mentioned, you'll have a chance to say those later. And you are always welcome at any time to pull up localfoodeconomies.org or ncgrowingtogether.org, which are the places where we'll have all of these links that will put you to the recording and to these resources later. And with that, I'm really, really happy to introduce you guys to Jill Willett. She's the founder of Coaching for Cooks and Triangle Food Makers. She has a lot of experience doing this work, and she's a really, really great resource for those of you in North Carolina, and we're really excited to have her here to talk with you today. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Emily. All right, give us a second here. I'm going to do a little switch up. We're on site in Raleigh at the Rural Center. Let me go ahead and plug in my mic here. Give me just a second. There we go. I want to make sure that you guys can hear me really well, and I know you can hear me better when there's a headset here. So, welcome everyone. It's nice to be here. Let me advance my slide. Welcome to the webinar hosted by the Rural Center and NC Growing Together, starting or growing our food business in North Carolina. I know each of you guys are really busy, and I've done my best to make sure that the hour and 15 minutes or so we're going to spend together is worth every minute of your time. So thanks for taking time out of your busy days to be here with us today. So we are on the GoToWebinar platform, and we're going to do a little bit of a technology test. I have an awesome technology wing person here named Jill Willett. So if at any point you guys have any sort of technology issues, you can do one of two things. We're going to test the chat box function. You'll be able to use the chat box to ask questions, but also if you have tech issues, just put maybe in capital letters tech. Or you can also email Jill Willett directly at jrichmond, R-I-C-H-M-O-N-D, at ncruralcenter.org, jrichmond@ncruralcenter.org if you have any sort of tech issues. So a couple quick housekeeping things today. We've got about an hour webinar planned, a little less. We'll go till about 11, a little after 11, and then we have about 10 minutes at the end that we've carved out for some Q&A. So you guys are going to be able to communicate with us and with me primarily in two different ways. You're going to be able to raise your hand if I ask a yes or no question, or you'll be able to communicate through the chat box, which will be your primary way. You don't have the ability to unmute yourself, so we won't be able to take live calls, but That's okay, because kind of chat box questions are really fun too. So there'll be a few times throughout the webinar that I'm kind of prompting you guys to input some information in there. Some of you might be on a smartphone or a tablet. Sometimes with GoToWebinar you might need to swipe to toggle between your screens. So again, if you can't find your raise hand function or your chat box function, you can email Jaleisha at jrichman@ncroll.org and she can help you. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to test the raise hand function. So go ahead, everyone try and find it. And I want to ask a question, and if you agree, then you can raise your hand. It's great. We have, I think, 42 of you guys on the call right now, so it's nice to have so many people here. So if you, let's say, if you won $1,000 that you could spend on any local food business in North Carolina, how many of you guys would be excited? So go ahead, raise your hand. Use Find Your Raise Hand function. Should be kind of in your main dashboard. I see one raised hand. Christina raised her hand. Keep going. Good. Lance raised hand. Tammy, Montel. Good. You guys are finding it. Christy. Oh, good. We got a bunch. I think at least 3/4 of you guys have raised your hand. Awesome. So make sure you can find that raise hand function. And then let's go ahead and lower all of the hands, Jaleisha, if we could. So excellent. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to test our chat box function. And I want to get to know you guys a little bit more. I know we have, like I said, a little over 40 people on the call right now, and many of you guys are small business counselors. Some of you are SCORE mentors. This webinar was really geared towards people that are working with people that want to start food businesses. So they're coming to you for support. So here's what I want you guys to do. Find your chat box, and we want to get to know who's on the call a little bit. So I want you guys to enter who you are. Your name should come up automatically. So who you are, if you're a small business counselor or you're a SCORE mentor or anything in between, you work for Cooperative Extension, and tell us what it is you do. So we're going to go ahead and just kind of see who's on the call here. The more you can participate, the better. So we want to know where you are and what you do. So if you're a small business counselor from Charlotte, go ahead, put small business counselor from Mecklenburg, and we can kind of see who's on the call here. So go ahead and find that chat box function. I know you guys, are you guys seeing anything right now? Because I'm not seeing it right. Good, thank you, Emily. So make sure on the bottom of your chat box, because I'm not seeing what you guys are, but on the bottom of your chat box, there's an option that says who you can send the message to. Make sure it says all entire audience, otherwise you might be sending it directly to us. So remember, tell us who you are and where you're located. And Jaleisha, I'm not seeing anything on my end, but I know you guys are entering stuff in there. So Emily is going to tell us a little bit about who's on the call here in just a second. Do you have the ability to unmute yourself or to hop on audio or not? See, we're still testing out the technology, so maybe we'll look under questions and see if that. Actually, we have some, Jaleisha, we have some questions. Rebecca's asking if there's a call-in number. You got those. Okay, good. Oh, bummer, you guys. I'm not being able, all right, give us just 1 second. I'm going to pop around the screen here and see what Emily is seeing over here. Hold on 1 second. It's coming up under questions. Okay. Hers is in the chat. All right. Well, we're going to try one more time to just kind of do this because I really want to see who's on the call. It's not going to work. Oh, bummer. Thanks for bearing with us. We're learning some of the technology too. And normally this would show up. Let me just look pull up the questions here. Yep, I'm seeing that there's questions, but not the chat for some reason. Okay. Well, so we're going to pause for just a second. So it's when I ask in the presentation, in fact, let me mute for just 1 second. Give us a second, guys. All right, well, we're going to keep going. I'm sorry, a little hiccup, technology hiccup there. The chat box is one of my favorite things because it's my best way as a facilitator to be able to interact with you guys. So we're going to work on that because I know there's a couple things. I want to make sure you guys can ask questions that I can answer live. And there's a couple things that I'm actually going to be prompting you to enter into the chat box. But right now, we're going to keep going. I know that when I saw we had probably 60 or 70 people that had registered, and again, we have about 45 of you guys on now. I saw people from all over the state. You guys are small business counselors. In fact, I saw a lot, and I'm located here in Raleigh in the Triangle, but the majority of folks that had registered for this call were in areas outside the Triangle, which I was really happy to see. So I'm thrilled you guys are here. We're going to go ahead and move on. So here's what we're going to cover today. The first thing we're going to cover are some of the biggest struggles that entrepreneurs commonly face, food entrepreneurs in particular commonly face. We're going to talk about some of the common mistakes that they make when they start a food business and what, as their support system, one of their support systems, how you can help them avoid some of those mistakes, okay? The third thing we're going to talk about is kind of the best tips to help your clients grow their food businesses. And these are a range of marketing tips, mindset, operational tips, a little bit of everything kind of threw in there. And at the end, I've got some kind of a pretty robust resource section so that I know that a lot of the folks, when they come to you, they're going to need referrals, they need help, and they're looking to you to help point them in the right direction. So I've got a resource list that we're going to go through some of today. And after this call, you're going to get a copy of this presentation. So I would encourage you to take notes, but you will get a copy of this. And there will be a copy of the resources with all of the links as well that is going to get sent to you. We're going to compile some of it because I know we're going to actually ask you to contribute to some of that too. So those are the 4 things that we're going to cover today, okay? What types of food businesses are we going to really focus on, right? The first we're going to focus on for this webinar are the folks making value-added food products. And that's a lot of people out there. They're making sauces or pickles or jams or, you know, anything in between, granola, cake mixes, everything. They're making a physical product that they're going to sell. This will also be helpful for some of the growers out there. We have a lot of growers and agriculture folks on that are represented in our state. Anyone starting a food truck or mobile food industry, mobile food carts, personal chefs, caterers, and kind of everything in between. Some of this will apply, in fact, I would say almost all of this will also apply to restaurants, but it's really tailored towards folks that are working either to make a product or offering some sort of a food service, okay? So, I'm not going to go on and on about myself, but it is in your interest to know a little bit more about me so you can understand kind of where some of these suggestions are coming from. So I used to be a food maker just like many of your clients. So I know personally kind of the challenges and the vagueness and all of the stuff that goes into starting and building a food business that they face. I used to own an organic baby food company in San Francisco, so this was my commercial kitchen. This was what the baby food looked like. It was frozen. It was really pretty. I would shop at, work with my local farmers and source as many ingredients as I could. And I sold at different trade shows, at farmers markets, online, and everything. So I was really, I was in the kitchen. I was doing this like a lot of your folks are. And before that, I had a 10-year career as a director of sales and marketing for Hilton Hotels, and I was kind of raised in the corporate world that way. So I kind of learned, I took 10 years of sales and marketing from a corporate standpoint, combined it with a few years of being a food entrepreneur myself, and now nearly 5 years of being a coach and an instructor specifically for food businesses. I've worked with hundreds of clients now, either privately in groups or teaching workshops or whatnot. So I've kind of combined all of that, and so that's where I'm coming from. So again, not too much that I didn't want to go too much into it, but I wanted to give you a little sense of who I am. So now my practice is coaching for cooks. I work with clients privately. I love group coaching. I have an 8-week marketing, that's called the Ultimate Marketing Boot Camp that's going on right now. Many of you guys might have heard I offer a lot of different free webinars. This one was 3 Keys to Growing Your Food Business. I also offer a bunch of free guides. This one's the 10 steps to growing your food business too. So there's a lot of different ways that I try and support at any level growing food companies. And Emily mentioned before Triangle Food Makers, which I would really encourage you to share with your clients. It's a community of about 700 people. It is located mostly in the Triangle, although there are folks from the Triad and even from the coast that kind of come to some of the gatherings. They're about 3 times a year. And the next one's happening May 25th in Durham at the American Underground. And although I haven't announced it yet, the topic is going to be all about crowdfunding and the new crowdfunding rules, the NC PACES Act that's just taken place this month. There's some great opportunities, particularly for food entrepreneurs, to raise money legally now from their community members in North Carolina. So that's kind of the quick introduction. Thanks for hanging with us. We are going to go ahead and get started. Right? So I want to remind you that although we're working out some of these technical issues, again, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand for some yes/no questions. If there's any sort of tech support, you can go ahead in the chat window, and Emily is able to see that. And then there will be some Q&A at the end. So again, feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation. And Emily will either kind of serve those up to me as we go, or she'll kind of compile a list, and at the end we're going to answer a lot of those questions. So I'll stay on as long as I can to get all of your questions answered. Okay? Excited? Let's do it. So this is, I keep saying that this is a really exciting time to start a food business in North Carolina. We have a lot of stuff going for us in this state. We've got so much agriculture, right? We have all this access to agriculture, so we have all this access to amazing products. I think that food tends to be, you hear a lot about people who have always dreamed about starting food businesses, or they've made a sauce that everyone tells them they need to bottle and sell. There's a lot of like personal stories and really around food that I think really inspires people to start food businesses. It's also generally low kind of barriers to entry, depending on your food product or your food service. It isn't usually a gigantic startup time that that it takes to get these businesses started, right? I grew up in this state. I moved away for about 15 years and came back 3 years ago and was just blown away by the excitement for the food, kind of local food sector in this area. So I don't have statistics right now. The NCDA, I tried to get a few statistics, but I can tell you anecdotally that there is so much energy around the local food kind of system now that it's a great time to be starting or thinking about starting a business in the state here. All right. So let's jump right in and talk about kind of the biggest struggles that food entrepreneurs tend to face, right? And because of our time, I've limited each of these kind of to 4 to 5 different suggestions or struggles or whatnot. We're not going to cover all of them. And in fact, I would love for you guys to add to this. So if you keep hearing about a certain struggle that one of your clients is facing or that you have faced, I'd love for you to put that in the chat box as well. So one of the biggest struggles is access to affordable kitchen space, right? Whether you want to make a product and manufacture a product, or you want to run a bakery or a catering business, finding a place to legally cook your product is a constant challenge. And up until about 1.5 years ago, the state actually had laws that prohibited shared kitchens, meaning like kind of kitchens by the hour where you had multiple entrepreneurs in the space at the same time, whether they were in kind of different locations or not. The state had not been super friendly to shared kitchens, but they've changed those rules about 1.5 years ago. It is still up to each individual county to come up with the rules to actually issue permits, but I can tell you that that was a really big barrier that's lifted. So one of the big common struggles is to actually finding a place to cook. And for some of you guys that have clients, particularly that are making what I would consider non-potentially hazardous products like jams or breads, things that don't need refrigerations, there are toffees, candies, chocolates. There are some options to actually have a home kitchen, which we will mention a little bit later too. The second biggest struggle is very much some high overhead, especially if you're making a product, right? You've got the kitchen space, which can be, you know, $1,000 or more a month. You know, the average kind of kitchen rental is, let's say, $15 or $20 an hour, so that can add up pretty quickly. You've got jars or bottles, or certainly your cost of ingredients, right? You've got a lot of high overhead. So there is kind of an upfront capital need when folks are starting food businesses usually. You know, it's less if you're more on the service side, catering or bakery, because you're not investing in kind of, you know, the larger amount of products, but there's still kind of that kitchen rental. I didn't believe this. I have to share with you guys. When I was starting my baby food company and people told me it would be potentially 2 or 3 years to be able to like turn a profit, I thought it was crap, to be honest. I just thought it was like, there's just no way, right? But it is way. And so I would, you know, we're going to talk a little bit about this later, but really encourage your folks to know their numbers, right? Because if they are, whenever I have a client who is saying like I need to make money to support my family in the next 6 months, that as a coach makes me nervous, because I mean, you really want to have all of your basic financial needs kind of taken care of, ideally with maybe a second income, or they're working and building this on the side, because it really does take a long time generally to turn a profit for these business. And certainly this is growing in our area, and I'm going to tell you again about some really awesome food resources. The NCDA, I can't tell you how much, they have some great resources as well, and tons of other places. But these food entrepreneurs, you know, taking a generic entrepreneurship class can help, but there's nothing like having some more food-specific resources that answer those really technical questions that really only someone with food training might be able to answer. Okay, so again, a lot of other struggles. Those are just the ones that I see come up for people the most. Right, so let's jump right into what are some of, maybe I narrowed it down to 5 common mistakes. All right, some of these will be specific to the food industry, and some of them will be more generic for, or more kind of broader for all of entrepreneurs. For instance, classic, right? Underestimating the cost and overestimating your sales. I think it was Tony Robbins that once said, we always overestimate what we can do in the first year, but we greatly underestimate what we can do in 3. And so, you know, you really, I know I did this, I made this mistake as well when I was starting my baby food business. You just are overly optimistic with how much that money is going to come in, and you really underestimate how much it's going to cost. So I would really recommend recommend these guys get some help with their financial statements. Maybe that's with you, maybe that's with some other resource center or mentor, but they need to get solid on their financials, right? And they need to take an active role. I was someone who said, you know what, ironically, I'm a math person, but the accounting never really makes sense to me. I want to be out there talking to people and selling my product. So I kind of took a back seat with my numbers, which was a really big mistake. As a founder of a business, you know, food business, like, you need to understand your numbers. So I just can't drill that in enough, right? So get solid on your financials, talk to other food makers about reasonable expectations. Triangle Food Makers is a great chance to kind of connect with other peers. And I will also tell you, Triangle Food Makers is launching a listserv in the next few weeks that is going to help connect food entrepreneurs together. Again, it's mostly for folks in the Triangle, but there's no reason actually we couldn't include other people, you know, from around the state too, but it's a great way to connect directly with peers. Another common mistake, and this is also pretty classic, spending too much time on operations and not enough on a plan to find customers, right? My area of expertise that I work with folks primarily on is marketing their food business. And this is a classic situation where you're dealing with getting your permits and your labels and finding a kitchen, and you're putting out fires a lot once you get into the production. And marketing inevitably falls to the bottom. It just happens. So you really need to encourage them to carve out time every week for their marketing. You could have the best product in the world or the best service in the world, and if you have no one buying it, you have no company, right? So I tell people, but it's also, marketing is a little, I think because it's a little elusive, it's not like I do this now and I see the result right now. It needs to be kind of done over time. So it's a little, I know it always tends to get shuffled down. So don't get caught in what I call the hamster wheel. And many of you guys know Mike Eliyahu. He owns a company called Kanishalicious. He and I worked together, and he was a classic example where he got so involved in his operations that he kind of lost track of his business growth, right? So we got him kind of focused back on the right priorities, and his sales have gone up. His ability to be with his family has gone up. His ability to give back with his company as a result has gone up. So I just want to highlight again that people need to not be only consumed by operations. And it's a great, I don't know if I put this later in the presentation or not, but it's a great thing to remember that there's just no better time to work on your marketing than before you start your business. So if you have clients who are getting ready to start, ideally in like 3 months, 6 months, like that's the time to build their mailing list. That's the time to start marketing. That's the time to kind of get things going, because I promise you when they hit that go button, it just goes away really quickly, right? So another common mistake is assuming they can build a business based exclusively on selling at farmers markets. I think that this is, I hear it a lot from folks I speak with, that, you know, that's kind of what they envision, selling at farmers markets. And I sold at farmers markets for a while. There's so much upside to it, right? It's great marketing, great exposure, great feedback, great finger on the pulse. You get more of your dollar, but it's also very labor intensive. It's a 9-hour or longer day. You do have kind of a cap on your money, on kind of what you're able to do. So I would encourage your clients to consider, you know, selling retail, so it's less money, less of the dollar, but they're selling in higher volume. They could have an online store with, you know, different specials a few times a year, so that's bigger quantities they're making. And they could consider food service. You know, there's a lot of kind of folks like Cisco now have folks that are really focusing more on beefing up their local food, kind of their, you know, their locally made food items that are getting into hospitals, universities, you know, stadiums, things like that. So encourage them to think a little bit beyond just those farmers markets, perhaps. So you want to look at multiple distribution channels, right? Okay. One of the next mistakes is thinking that you have to manufacture your food product yourself, right? So I always encourage my clients to ask themselves, do they really want to run a kitchen, right? And there's no shame if they don't. There are some amazing local food companies that have what's called a co-packer, and many of you guys are probably familiar with this term. They have someone else making their food product for them, right? I never wanted to run a kitchen. I did to start, but in the long-term planning of my business, I knew that if this was going to expand, like, my route was co-packer, because I'm better running the business. I'm better talking to people. So it's great for them to consider that they may not need to be the one making their food product if they're actually making a product. And one thing I want to mention that a lot of people don't know about or know that is an option is, you know, you have a lot of what's called co-packing. You have companies, and I know that NC Growing Together is putting together kind of an updated list of co-packers and several other folks, manufacturers in the area, and the NCDA has a great list of those too. You know, there's, I think, maybe 5 or 6 or more in the state that are on the NCDA's website now. These are bigger companies. You know, this is what they do. That's their whole business. So that's one option. Another option that most people don't know about is a private co-packer, and that is approaching another local company to make your product for you when you have kind of a private co-packing deal. As an example, if there is a gluten-free baker, maybe if I have a gluten-free cake mix, I contract with them to actually use their facility the kind of mountain of operational tasks, and that leads to them not being focused, and then of course feeling discouraged, right? So this is all about your kind of mental mindset, right? You need to be organized, and one of the best ways to do that is to work with an accountability buddy that can help you stay focused on different things. Oh, look, we just got all of the stuff that came through the chat window. So one of the things that you can do is to really work with some sort of an accountability partner. That could be a coach like me. It could be a score mentor. It could be a peer that was really committed to making progress on their business. But you really want to work with that person to maintain your focus, make sure you're making progress, and keep you inspired, because what we're doing is hard. What they're doing is hard, and it's a total roller coaster ride, right? So keeping them keeping them in a good mental mindset is one of the best mistakes as people get kind of down. All right. I saw that Emily was able to copy in or put in a bunch of the folks that you guys are all here. And so I want to come back and just so that you guys all know, again, we have like 45 people. It's great. So I'm going to read a few of these. We have Jeff from the Small Business Center in Hickory. We've got Linda Berard here, and pardon me if I butcher your names, guys. I'm going to try hard. Tanita Solana from Siler City, from Green Panda Farms. Rachel, who's an agent in consumer and retail food safety at NC Cooperative Extension. We have a few Cooperative Extension folks. This is great. Jessica from the Small Business Center in Montgomery, and Montgomery Community College. Excellent. Dan, who's a librarian at Campbell University in Buies Creek. Tom at the Small Business Center in Charlotte, who's a counselor. Angela at the Carolina Small Business Development Fund in Raleigh. Hey, Angela. Kathy, score mentor in Charlotte. We have so many of you guys. I'm not going to get to everyone, but Fenton's here from the Community Development Small Business Organizer. We have folks from Goldsboro, Carteret, I'm going to kind of read locations, Carteret Community College, Beaufort Community College, Beaufort County College, Asheville Score. We've got folks from Greensboro, Chapel Hill. We have so many, this is so great, so many folks on the phone. We've got a few folks from the Carolina Small Business Development Fund, that's great. I saw that a few of my buddies from over there had registered. Kathleen, who's the educator at the NC Rural Center. Hey, Kathleen. Awesome. So you guys can get a sense of who is on the call. Thanks, Emily, for getting that up. So excellent. And I'm getting a note too that my sound is breaking up a little bit. So if you're having a hard time here, I'm going to try and slow down a little bit. But if you are having a hard time kind of hearing me, just make sure you're putting that in the chat box so that we know. I can always turn my video off and see if that helps. So Emily, let me know if that becomes a problem. I can just turn my video off. Okay, awesome. So we're going to keep going here, but I just wanted to give you guys a sense of who's on the line, because it's hard in a webinar to feel like there's a whole group of people or kind of a conversation here, since it's mostly me talking. Awesome. So this is where I want to spend a good part of our time here, which is what are some of the tips to actually help the folks that you're working with grow their food businesses. And I'm going to ask you guys here to, into the chat window, I'm going to share, 5 that I kind of see come up the most and people find the most helpful. But I know that you guys have tons of information and you're already sharing a lot of these tips with your clients. So as we go through here, please enter into the chat window. What are the other tips that you're sharing with folks that they're finding really helpful? Because we've got 45 of you guys on the phone and you're all brilliant minds and have tons of great resources. So go ahead and put those in the chat window. And we're going to go ahead and at least get started on the 5 that I wanted to cover today. The first one is don't be afraid to raise money. And I experience this myself, and so many of the food entrepreneurs that I work with do as well, which is they have this kind of feeling of you have to do it all yourself, right? I don't want help from anyone. I feel like there's kind of this pride thing that happens. But over and over again, the businesses that succeed and have the best track records are the ones that have money, the ones that have money. My dad always used to say, money gives you options, Jill. Money gives you options. And when your money starts to run out, your options start to run out. So to the best of your ability, encourage them to look at different types of ways that they could raise money. It could be something from friends, like a friends and family loan, which people are really kind of like, I don't want to ask my friends and family, tell them to get over it. They could get a small business loan, run a crowdfunding campaign, right? So there's a lot of different ways that they can start at least to explore some of the opportunities to raise money, because these businesses need capital. They need some money up under them in order to be successful. And not that you can't bootstrap, and no, most people do, to be honest, bootstrap businesses, but there's an easier way. If you could, run a crowdfunding campaign, and I'm not saying that that's the best way necessarily, but if you, run sort of a campaign for $15,000, all of a sudden, you can spend $500 to build out a website and you get 4 weeks of your time back perhaps. So it's just a smart way. I know I'm preaching to the choir here. So again, if crowdfunding in particular is something that your clients might find of interest, and in the follow-up email, I'll include a link to the next Triangle Food Maker meeting, although we haven't put the topic on there just so you know, but it's May 25th at the American Underground in Durham, and it's going to cover the new crowdfunding rules. Okay? That's the first. Don't be afraid to encourage them to raise money. The second tip is definitely carve out some sacred time for marketing. And of course, this is the part that I get really enthusiastic about, because this is mostly what I work on with folks, is marketing. But encourage them to block time on their calendar every single week or month to focus on building their business, right? Working on it, not in it, right? The majority of food people spend most of their time working in their business. They're in the kitchen. They're delivering. They're designing, helping to design labels. They're ordering food, right? They're getting permits. They're working in their business, but they're not working on it. So marketing really helps kind of shift that focus to a little bit longer term. So as I mentioned before, the best time to encourage people to work on their marketing is before they start their food business. So if that's an option, encourage that to be part of their kind of business planning. And I created a guide called the 10 Steps to Grow Your Food Business. It's a 7-page guide. It's pretty juicy. It has the 10 things that I like to recommend for folks to grow, and it also has a quick way to tell if you're skilled or lost in each area. So I'm going to send you guys a link that you can download that as well, and you can pass that link on to your clients if that's something that they might find handy. It's a pretty juicy little handout. Okay, so carve out sacred time for marketing. The third tip is start a mailing list and start talking. Now, if any of you guys have heard me speak before, you probably know that mailing lists are, like, I kind of geek out on mailing lists. They're one of the topics that I could spend a lot of time talking about. In fact, if any of your clients are members of Specialty Food, the NC Specialty Food Association, they have I think their spring conference is coming up on the 24th of April, and it's nearly a full day of really food-specific content. It's geared towards specialty food, so it's more product, but I'm talking for 45 minutes all about mailing lists there. So here's the deal. People get kind of tripped up on mailing lists because it's two parts, right? The first part is actually building your list, consolidating all of your contact information into one place, whether that's an Excel spreadsheet, whether that is something like MailChimp or Constant Contact where it's an actual newsletter platform. Compiling it is the first part. Sending things out is the second part. And most people, when they think about starting a mailing list, they get really tripped up on the second part. Well, I don't know what I would tell people. So I always encourage them, especially when they're starting, it's totally fine to not worry yet about what you're going to send out. Start first of actually compiling that list. And this is a little bit tedious and manual, and it is still, I maintain, one of the best places that you can spend your time. Think of it like a whole list of people that might want to pay you money, right? So, so even if it's an Excel sheet, have them consolidate their contact information. And then of course they need to drive people to it. And I'm going to talk about in just a second what I mean by a compelling reason. But you want to have sign-up sheets at all of your live events. You want to be able to invite people to join. Having a sign-up box on your website is just not enough, right? It's too passive. You need to be actively growing your mailing list. So how many of you guys, will do a quick raise hand function, get ready with your raise hand. How many of you guys are already subscribed to like way too many newsletters, right? If you could just like hit unsubscribe, like how many of you guys are like, oh my gosh, I don't want to turn my contact information over to anyone ever again, right? We've got a lot of hands that are kind of going up there. Awesome, yeah, you guys, like everyone knows they have too much, yeah, oh yeah, all of you guys are raising your hands now. This is a day and age where we already get a lot of mail, right? So as a food entrepreneur, you know, you can encourage them to ask themselves, like, why would someone want to stay in touch with me? And what I like to encourage people to create is what I call an insider opportunity. This is like a special, it's like VIP benefits for being part of your newsletter, being part of your mailing list, your club, whatever it is you want to call it. And I'm going to spend a little time telling you about this because this is a huge missed opportunity if people don't have this component to their mailing list, right? If they just say, hey, sign up for our mailing list, people are not super excited about it. So let me give you some examples of what insider opportunities can look like for people in the food business. It could be special sales. So it could be like, hey, twice a year we have this awesome semi-annual clearance sale, and folks on this list get to be the first. They get advanced access, or they get to be the first or only people to hear about it. Code words are one of my favorite things to play around with. They're like hidden menus. There was a popsicle company in San Francisco who would do code words. And if you would like go up to their little popsicle stand and you would whisper like Bangkok Nights, you'd get access to these like secret popsicle flavors that they were testing, free guides. If your clients do already a lot of events that like sell out, like they teach classes or they have tastings or something like that, you can say that people on your list get advanced invitations. They get the first crack at spots for some of these sold out events. Is that making sense, you guys? News alerts. Your business is moving to a farmer's market. One of my clients in my 8-week boot camp program just started selling at the Durham Bulls, stadium. So like any sort of big news alert, like you want to be able to tell people. Weekly flavors. This is what I did with my baby food company, which operationally was a nightmare, but I changed my baby food flavors every week. And so I got to say to people, hey, if you go ahead and put your name on this list, then, every Friday I send you a quick note with the flavors of the week, and of course they had a link to my blog and any classes I was teaching or whatnot, but that can be a nice insider opportunity to entice them to leave their contact information. Special events, discounts, limited flavors is a big one. Think of like the wine clubs in, California. They have maybe limited releases or small batches of certain high-end flavors, and their club gets the first crack at it. So any sort of other like VIP benefits, right? I think you guys are kind of getting what I'm talking about here. So let me tell you, I'll show you a quick example of this idea in action. Chocolate Day Confections is one of my 6-month mastermind program, and they were part of that. They're a chocolate company in Chapel Hill, and they created, as a result of this program, they created a Chocolate Tasters Club. And how many of you guys would love to be part of like a secret Chocolate Tasters Club? It just sounds really cool. So here's an example, their Secret Tasters Club in their blog. This was a little snippet that I took from their newsletter. They were testing out a new, like a Dominican dessert. And so anyone on their Secret Tasters Club could come to their farmer's market booth and get a whole free taste of this and everything. So you just had to identify yourself as a Tasters member, and then you get all this stuff. So again, that's kind of an, and of course in this case, it's a double thumbs up because it gets them to the farmer's market booth, and of course their chocolate's amazing if you guys have had it, and they're going to buy more, there too. all right? So again, with mailing lists, it's okay if they just start by consolidating names and to the best of your ability, encourage them to come up with some sort of VIP benefits that are attached to that mailing list so that they can legitimately say, like, there's value to being on this list. All right, you guys get what I'm saying? Okay. One of the next tips is to be patient and flexible. Oh, this is such a big one, right? Again, this is kind of more of the mindset stuff, but you know, as you guys know, and as I'm sure you've seen from all of your clients, like, it is a roller coaster, right? You have weeks where you are like the lowest of low and everything is working against you, right? I call it like pedaling through peanut butter because it feels like everything is hard. And all of a sudden, you have one day where everything clicks and you're like on top of the world, and the next moment it's down, right? So I've had people that have made the choice to close down companies because they have just been not able to ride that out, right? So you got to really roll with the punches. This is definitely not for the faint of heart. The more resilient that these food entrepreneurs can be, the better. All right. And I'm just going to throw real quick to Emily. If there's anything in the chat window that's coming up that feels relevant, feel free to send that to me. Okay, we're good. Awesome. Again, you guys can, if there's questions that come up with any of these topics, go ahead and put them into the chat window. Emily's going to relay them to me. And again, we'll have some time at the end for Q&A. I hope you guys will take advantage of the Q&A. I know that you guys have some lots of questions out there that you want to ask and share. All right, so next is, as I think I alluded to it before, is get some regular accountability and support. And for a lot of you guys, that's one of your roles that you fill, which is wonderful. All the food entrepreneurs need people like you, people like me, to help keep them focused and inspired, right? So Entrepreneur Magazine called having an accountability buddy is like an entrepreneur's secret weapon. Like, this is the secret that founders of very successful companies use to make progress in their businesses, to keep themselves personally accountable, to keep the business accountable. I have coaches, I have 2 coach accountability buddies that I meet with every other week, and we talk about what we're working on and what we're doing, and we're sounding boards for each other, right? That's kind of an example of a peer. I certainly serve as a sounding board and accountability for the private and group clients that I work with. And, you know, again, they're using a lot of the resources like you guys, the SCORE mentors, the small business counselors, the cooperative extension agents. They're leaning on you. So I always kind of say that it's you have to, like, provide both reality and also inspiration. You can't be so realistic that you end up like being a dream crusher, right? Even when they're telling you things that you know won't work, you can't say that's not going to work, right? Because that just takes all the wind out of their sails. But you also be a yes ma'am, right? So somewhere in the middle there, you need to provide that sense of reality, but you also want to do it in a really positive and encouraging way, okay? So encourage them, whatever that looks like, to get some accountability and support that they really need. All right, so this is what I want to throw to you guys for just a second. So get ready to put some stuff into the chat box. I know that you guys have other great tips that you have shared with your food clients. So what are you telling them that they need to be doing? What are they coming to you kind of struggling with, and how are you suggesting it to them? And I'd love for you guys to participate a little bit. I know it's going to take us just a minute since I am not able to see what you guys are putting in right away, but you know, I know that these guys are coming to you, and they're, you know, they want to start food businesses, or they maybe have been in business for a while, and they're coming to you for some help, right? They're coming to you because they need some help and support. So I know you're already doing a great job of this, and you're here hopefully on this webinar just to up-level that, right? There's a question from Elizabeth. Let me see here. Can you recommend any specific templates for financial information, either startup expenses or P&L statements, that is especially helpful to food entrepreneurs? Thanks for the question, Elizabeth. I will tell you that I don't have a great answer for this. There are a few people that I've worked with more as like private consultants that have helped with P&Ls and financials. And I have a great resource, but she's out of the state. She's in California. She's kind of like a CFO for hire specifically for food businesses. She's been a CFO for a few food businesses before. It's called Bernoulli Finance. And I know that the NCDA, for companies that have been in business for more than a year and already have sales, the NCDA through, I believe, Annette Dunlap does some financial coaching as well. I don't have specific templates that I can recommend. All right, but again, it's another great example of if you can encourage them to connect directly with some of their food tribe people. Like the people that have this would be the ones that have the food businesses. All right, I know it's not a perfect answer, but thanks for that question. So let's see, a question from Tom. Not a question, thank you, Tom. One of the best practices, I try and get clients to have their story that they can tell about them or their business. Tom, that's a great point. Being able to articulate and tell your story, and I call it answering the question, like, what do you do? Like in the simplest terms, like when someone asks, what do you do? I hate calling it an elevator pitch because it's not that, but having, a 30-second, like, interesting way to describe what you do is really key, because as soon as you fumble that, people lose confidence in you and they lose interest. So I think it's a great tip, Tom, is encouraging them to spend a little time with connecting and being able to articulate their company story. Awesome. I know you guys have other tips that you share. Please go ahead and send them in. Let's see, and Emily responded, thank you, Emily, from NC Growing Together, who's hosting this too. She's also adding to Elizabeth's question. You'll be linked to food regulations at federal, state, and local levels during the presentation. Oh, I'm sorry, Elizabeth asked, I answered the wrong question. Elizabeth asked a question, can you link to food regulations, state and local? So we're going to be sending out, I'm just about ready to get to a resource section, it's the very next slide here, and we're going to be sending out a lot of different resources with links after this webinar. And Emily has also said that we're going to be sending that out after the presentation too. Okay, and I tell you what, may I ask your question, but I'm going to answer the question that I can in the Q&A section, which will be right after. Also, Emily also said that Elizabeth, when it comes to specific templates for a financial, she always recommends QuickBooks, which is true. I mean, that's definitely one of the kind of most popular ways to manage your financials. It's pretty user-friendly, versatile, widely there's online versions now, so it's, you pay typically like a monthly fee to use it. And I know also that a lot of technical community colleges, and you guys, many of you are on the line, they offer 3- and 4-part training series in QuickBooks. And I'll be really honest, I think that this, for some people that are not accounting or bookkeeping minded, like me, this can be a great area, one of the first great areas to get a little bit of support for your business. And what I like to recommend is maybe they find a bookkeeper for $200-300 a month, can actually manage all of their invoices and their daily stuff. They are still going over every month with them, or every bi-week, every 2 weeks. Calendar, you're still very informed about what is going on, right? So Bob said this, there's a score template focused on users who don't want to understand accounting, and he put a link. I think that all see that, so he put a link for score. Thank you for submitting that, Bob. And we can add that into our resource section too. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to our resources, because I want to end as close to 11 as we can, and that way we have time for some questions. And I know you guys have. Get your pens ready, because I want you to write down questions in the chat window for us here. Okay, so this is pretty, okay, so let me say, I have 5 slides of resources here, and I'm not going to read or go through all of them. And I know that there's a lot missing on the list. NC Growing Together, it says it's just lost. Can you guys still hear me? It says I just lost my connection. You can still hear me on the phone. Okay, good. So, and you know what? I'm going to go ahead and turn off my video camera. And let's see. You guys can still hear me on the phone? Okay, technical issue. Good. Connection restored. Okay, good. So I think that you guys can still hear me. I'm going to keep talking, and if not, then someone will probably pop it in the chat window. So let's see. We're on the best resources for food businesses. Is that the slide that you're still seeing? Okay. There we go. Best resources for food businesses. We're just rolling with the technical difficulties here. So as I mentioned, this is a pretty large list. I'm not going to go over all of them, and you will receive shortly after the presentation. We're going to have kind of a list that has links to all of these. And I know there's a lot missing. My kind of my kind of home base is here in the Triangle, and I know most of you guys are actually not located here in the Triangle. So I really want you to send in the chat window, as we go through these sections, what are the resources that I'm missing on this list in your area? Because we're going to add them, right? There's no better folks than you guys on the ground knowing what's kind of missing. So let's dig into this. I've divided this in a couple different sections here. The first is around food production, which is, and again, these don't have the links, but there will be in your follow-up. There's links on the NCDA's website for getting your home kitchen certified. There's all sorts of information on co-packers and getting your products tested at NC State. And then there's some examples of the shared kitchens in the area, kind of kitchen space by the hour. And again, NC Growing Together is coming out, publishing soon kind of a list of food hubs, co-packers, and kitchen incubators in the state. So this is not a comprehensive list. But the Cookery in Durham, PFAP, which is in Hillsborough, Blue Ridge Ventures on our west coast, in Asheville, near Asheville. Several of the kind of food halls and public markets have been popping up. A lot of any sort of agriculture in the state. So if you have a product where you use primarily local products when in season, you're eligible for this free program. There's a lot of benefits to being part of it. They have a whole website of NCDA of their food program, the Specialty Food Association. There's also a contact list that I'm going to send to you guys. I think it's just for the marketing team, but it's pretty broad. It's pretty expansive for the NCDA, so that your folks will have some numbers, right, as well. There's a lot of support organizations. Certainly the Rural Center, which is our gracious host for today's webinar, is a big one. Many of you guys are from Cooperative Extension and NC Growing Together, and then a lot of you from the different small business networks. So you've got the SBT, I misspelled that, SBTDCs, sorry about that, and then the SBC. They're great support organizations, right? So look for those all over in your location. And then there are some industry organizations. If folks are interested in into mobile food, I really recommend the Raleigh-Durham Mobile Food Association of location, or Triangle Food Makers, which is what I mentioned before, kind of for their industry peers. Piedmont Culinary Guild in the middle of the state is another option too, okay? Again, I know I'm going through these kind of quickly. I also want to kind of start to wrap things down here. So on the fundraising side, you've got your traditional kind of, I won't say traditional, but your kind of more common crowdfunding platforms like Barnraiser, Kickstarter, Indiegogo. Kiva.org is one of my favorites because it's actually a loan. So if you contribute on Kiva, it's not like the perk-based crowdfunding. You actually get paid back over a couple years. Slow Money North Carolina, it's kind of a matchmaking service, a really personal way for people to make personal, everyday people like you and me to support food and farming enterprises. And the local public offering of the new PACES Act, that's what I was mentioning before, that's just taken effect this month. Many of the credit unions, then we mentioned small business, Carolina Small Business Development Fund, and just in general, CDFIs in your region are a great, great resource, right? So that's kind of, I wanted to make sure I highlighted some of the fundraising options. And then, of course, there's a lot of folks that are either coaches or consultants that do specialize in the food industry, and all of the people here have a specific focus on food, right? And not to say that you couldn't work outside of someone that focuses exclusively on food, but these guys have a lot of expertise working with food companies. Mine, Coaching for Cooks, which we've talked about, marketing and business coaching. Craft Financial works with financial planning. They're associated with Mass Mutual, and they have a specific focus on working with growing food companies. Tabletop Media does a great job of PR and social media for food companies, among other things. Food Business Services, Matt Roybal, does a lot with business operations. The Food Mint does a lot of website and branding. And then I'm a big fan of having a couple really great images to highlight you and to highlight your food. And Stacey's Friends Photography does food, people, and kind of spaces. So I know that's a pretty comprehensive list. And I know it's kind of scratching the surface. So I want to take just a minute and go ahead, and we're going to save this chat box and again, add whatever you guys recommend. We're going to add this to our list. So go ahead, take just a moment and enter into the chat box the name. And if you have a link, that would be even better, but you can put the link in, you could put the name in and we will find the link. Go ahead and put that into the chat box. What resources have we missed? What resources do we need to include that you send people to in your region? I just realized that SCORE is not on here too. We need to add SCORE back in there too. So go ahead and put in some of the resources that we missed into the chat window. Okay? Good. Emily's got SCORE in there too. Okay, put them in. And are we getting a couple in? I can read them off, or you can tell me which they are, Emily. All right, go ahead and put those in, and we'll make sure, I want to make sure that we've, since it is a little kind of more weighted just based on my neighborhood here in the Triangle, I want to make sure that we're really representing a lot of the resources that are in your area. So please go ahead, take a moment, put that in the chat window, and we'll make sure this gets added to the list. Okay, so let's do a quick review, and then we're going to open it up for some Q&A, all right? What did we learn today? We learned some of the biggest struggles for food entrepreneurs that they commonly face. We learned about the common mistakes when starting a food business and how to avoid them. We talked about some of the best tips that you can pass on to food entrepreneurs as they're either starting or growing their food business in the state. And we shared some of the top resources to help them start or grow their food business. Okay? I know we covered kind of a lot. So quick, we'll do one last raise hand test. How many of you guys found this webinar to be helpful? We really tried to make it a good use of your time. Raise your hand if this was something that was helpful for you. I hope that at the very least you got a few good nuggets to kind of pick off. Good, we've got a couple. Montel, hi Montel, couple raising hands there. Joe, hi Joe, nice to see you here. Christy, Linda, Berard, nice to have you here. Mark said Hagenbush, I'm going to butcher your name, sorry there. Ryan said it was good. Tammy Carter, thanks Tammy. Bob Gans, Candace, DeShane, I know I didn't get that right, Candace, sorry. Dan Maynard, Dan Stafford, awesome. Elizabeth, that's not good. I'm glad that you guys found this helpful. That makes me as a facilitator very happy. All right, so as we wind down, and I will tell you that I will open my brain up to you guys and make myself as available as I can for the next several minutes to answer some of the questions that you have. And I know we had one question I want to go back to. So if you have a question, go ahead and type it into the chat box, and Emily's going to, since it's only going to her, Emily's going to kind of paste it in here so that I can answer it. And stick around, even if, I hope you ask a question, because I know you've got questions that are on your mind, but even if you don't, stick around for a few minutes so that you can hear some of the responses to the other ones. And let me go back. I know we had a question, I think it was from Tammy. Give me just a second, Tammy. Let's see. So Tammy was asking how to attract customers to a kitchen. We're a nonprofit, only charge $6 an hour. and $25 yearly membership. That's great. Tammy, will you also enter in where, oh wait, maybe you put that down before. Where are you located? Caswell County. Okay, excellent. Excellent, and I got Candace's name right. Thanks, Candace. Okay, good. So, Tammy, attracting customers to a kitchen, all right? I've had a couple different clients of mine who are commercial kitchens. And feel free in the chat box to tell me a little bit more. Do you offer cooking classes? Do you cater towards kind of a particular segment? Are you offering it to all? This is where it'd be nice to be able to take people off mute. I wish we could do that. You know, are you looking for folks that manufacture products? Are you looking for people that are doing food trucks or catering? You're kind of doing a mix. If you let me know a little bit more, I can give you even a little bit more kind of specialized feedback. But I would say that kitchen renters, I know that that's a common problem that a lot of kitchen shared kitchens have, which is kind of managing their, managing their schedule. So I would say, and I'm sorry, I don't actually know where Caswell County is. Maybe Emily can tell me where. Do you know where Caswell? North of the triangle, about how far away? 30 minutes away? Couple hours away. Okay, so I would say certainly hook up, look at in your kind of more major, even metro areas within an hour. I think it's reasonable. It's not ideal, but I would say that it is reasonable to expect a food company to travel maybe up to 45 minutes, up to an hour to be able to make their product, or, certainly closer is better. But I would say the first bit is don't feel like you have to limit your reach just to your, 5 or 10 mile kind of area, especially in the little bit more kind of outside of the metro areas. I think it's fine to go bigger. If you can have any sort of, whether cooking classes are kind of a whole other part of the business that you may or may not want to get into, but having, the more company exposure certainly you can get for topics that will draw in will draw in food makers is probably one of the better tips that I would think of. So like I've gone in and, for Midway Community Kitchen in Chapel Hill, I've actually taught like a live workshop for food entrepreneurs at their kitchen, right? And so if you can maybe partner up with a couple other people that also serve the types of food entrepreneurs that you'd like to talk more with, and have some sort of an event that you can all market and all, do outreach for, and bring people in, I think that could be a good tip. So, and I'm just reading here, Tammy says that you're in a rural Tier 1 county. Most of the things she's doing, most of the things that I suggested, she can list the kitchen with the SBCs. That's good, so they can make referrals. Awesome. Emily is also adding that she's going to talking to other rural kind of incubators. I think for you, I would think about expanding your region as an option, and thinking about events that bring people that are going to actually attract the kind of customers that you want to have with your kitchen. I know that there's more that I could kind of think of too, but those are the ones that kind of are on the fly right now. So if there's Emily's also offering herself up because she's got some good resources around kind of rural kitchen incubators, and so she's put her email in the chat box that you can see. Emily, are there other questions that have come through? I know you guys have questions. Ask away. This is your chance. This is how you get the most out of a good. This is how you can get all of the best information out of a webinar, is to ask questions like this. And let me see if I can start my video again. Are there more questions we have? Yeah, so we, someone had a question about the resource list. We are going to be sending that resource list out. We're going to add some of the ones that you put on here, and we're getting links for some of the other ones, so there might be a bit of a day or two delay, but that will go out to you either as a page or an actual handout, and it will be something that you would definitely want to either bookmark or save so that you could you could be able to send it on to your clients. It'll be just a really nice, handy kind of one-stop shop for a lot of resources. Emily, there's a question that says, do you have any recommended resources for food cart vendors? It depends on where you are. I can say that if you're anywhere close to the Triangle, the RDU MFA is an amazing organization. They have about 80 kind of mobile food vendors, and that could be food trucks, it could be food carts, it could be food trailers, and they offer, I think it is a membership fee of maybe $300 a year, but they offer a lot of resources and a lot of lead generators and things like that for the mobile food area. Pardon me, for the mobile food area. I can tell you that a lot of, at least in the more metro areas, it's harder and harder to get a spot in some of like the food truck rodeos. I have to say that food trucks are becoming a little bit saturated. It's kind of like if you want to start a salsa company or a barbecue sauce company or a granola company. Buyers from Whole Foods and everyone else will tell you that those three categories in particular are pretty saturated. Mobile food is moving a little bit towards that, at least in kind of some of the metro areas. So it's harder and harder to get into some of the organized food rodeos that are there. But one of the best things that you can do is to perhaps partner up with breweries. And, you know, if there are breweries that only are offering drinks and, you know, you've got a regular schedule with them Thursday nights or something, partnering up with breweries is a great opportunity. Or any way to really get you more experience actually makes you more appealing for a rodeo. Don't expect if you start a food truck on Tuesday to call up a rodeo on a Wednesday and be able to get in a couple weeks. They're going to want you to have a couple of months of experience before they put you in there. All right, so let's see what else we have here. Yeah, a lot of different regulations based on food carts. You know, Emily's also offering herself up, thank you, as a reference. The incubators can treat food carts a little bit differently. So I have to tell you, the regulations when it comes to food safety and the kind of governing bodies on who is your authority on food safety, who's issuing your permits, varies greatly based on whether you have a product or you're serving prepared food, right? So every business is a little bit different. So, and again, mobile food is also a bit of a hybrid, right? Because sometimes there's a commissary kitchen, sometimes they're cooking out of a different kitchen. What if they're cooking on a truck? So there's a lot of kind of complexities with that too. Okay, what else? And Emily, is there anything else in here that we haven't addressed? All right. Okay, I don't see any other questions that have come through right now. And I know I'm going to turn it over in just a second to Emily to kind of wrap things up. Oh, we have one more question that's come through. All right, so it's about starting a business in kind of more tourist areas. In the western part of the state, and what's the question? Tips on, okay, so tips on starting a, sorry, I missed that first part. Thank you, tips on starting a business in the kind of tourist area of Cherokee County. So I would say in general, when you have a more transient customer base, right, you've got tourists that they're making a one-time purchase, couple things pop up. One is you want to the best of your ability, put together some sort of an offering that is the largest price point that you think they could handle, right? You know, whether it's a 3-pack of something or whatever, you know, since you're really going to more than likely, at least in person, only capitalize on that once, do the best you can to drive that price or put that offering as high as possible. The second is, if you want to combine that with an online, if you offer some sort of online, and again, I'm thinking product, but if you want to clarify a little bit more if it's a product that you're selling or what's the particular, like what's the specific food type business that I'm talking, I can answer it a little bit more specifically. But if it's a product of some sort that you might want to consider an online store that, you know, so again, someone makes a first purchase, but then maybe they get on your mailing list and then there's some sort of specials or VIP benefits because you've incorporated that insider opportunity. Maybe there's some sort of other opportunity for them to keep ordering things online if that is in line with your business model. right? So I think that in tourist areas, it's a matter of putting the right thing in front of people and trying to the best of your ability, you're looking at higher volume, right? Because you're doing a lot of more one-time transactions. So it's really important to capture that contact information if you have a follow-up with them. So that would be my quick answer. And if you have more questions about that, then feel free, you'll be able to reach out. You guys can always email me. In fact, here, I'll advance the next slide. My email here is jill@coachingforcooks.com. So if there are questions that we didn't get to, I know that the chat box window was a little bit of a technology problem for us now, but if there are questions that we didn't get to, I'm happy to answer them. And here, I'm actually going to try and turn my video back on for a second. Hopefully, we won't crash the thing here. So I can at least say hello and goodbye to you guys. And Emily's going to come on just for 1 minute and tell you about the next webinar that's going on. But I think we're probably going to wrap it up there because it's 11:18 by my count. Awesome. And in fact, Emily went ahead, I'll advance this slide. Emily went ahead and put the webinar in the link in the chat box. And it looks like there's a great webinar coming up, and let me see what the date is of that, May 24th, all right? So I know that NC Grant, all right? So thank you again for joining us. Thank you for rolling with some of our tech issues. This was really a pleasure to be here with you all. And again, look for a follow-up email from us in the next couple of days. It's going to have this presentation. It'll have the link to Triangle Food Makers, and it'll have this resource guide. And I'll also throw in there the link to download the free guide, which is the 10 steps to growing your food businesses, which is what I offer up as well. All right. This was such a pleasure. Thank you guys for your participation. Have a great rest of your day. Bye, everyone.